Welcome. Before we get to today's message, I wanted to let you know that we're here for you during this time. And more importantly, to let you know that God is for you.
Every weekend, we're streaming our worship experiences here on YouTube. If you subscribe, you'll be notified when we go live. And if you want to support what we're doing as a church, these messages, and everything we're doing towards outreach, you can give online at the link below.
Hey, thanks again for watching. Enjoy the message.
Hey, so we're talking about tools for soul health. And we had a question that came in, and I'm going to direct this to you, Dr. Robert. What help can you give us to be healthy individuals during this time?
Well, the word that I love when it comes to soul health is whole.
Yeah.
Our wholeness. You know, wholeness, it almost sounds a little bit like holiness. God is whole, perfect in every way.
Yeah.
And the scripture says, be perfect as he is perfect. But we know we fall short. But the beautiful thing is he is working to make us more like him.
Right.
So what does it take to be whole? You know, the answer is as old as the Bible. You know, one of the words that I love is rest. You know, rest. We look at the Sabbath.
Right.
You know, at Emerge Counseling, we talk about finding rest. One way to do it is to monitor your expectations. You know, for the person that is a mom at home right now, they're overwhelmed with all that they have to do. The kids are at home all day. There's loads going on. They're looking at social media. They're comparing themselves. So they're wondering, what do I do to measure up? Part of what we do is monitor our expectations. When your expectations are here and your reality is here, what you have in the middle is stress.
Wow.
So the only way to reduce the stress is to either change your reality, that's a little tough to do right now, or to alter your expectations. And you know, life is a lot of both.
Yeah.
So that's an important practice to keep peace in our own heart.
So, hey, maybe you're watching your mom or dad, and you're like, all right, give us one practical way to lower those expectations. Maybe you could tell us that.
Well, one, you know, teaching at home. Right now, moms and dads, you know, I'm doing Zoom calls, and the dad has just got done doing, you know, a lesson, or mom is doing a lesson. They're trying to keep up with their jobs. They have loads going on.
Right.
Then when they have a free minute, they're looking at Instagram.
Yeah.
And they're looking at Supermom, you know, another part of town, or Super Dad, and all that they're doing. And they're wondering, do I measure up?
Yeah.
Remember, you're a mom. You're a dad. Your kids need you to just be that to them. You're not going to be the greatest teacher in the world overnight if that's not what you've done. So go a little bit easier on yourself with your expectations.
That is great. How about you, Jason?
Yeah, so I think kind of along those same lines, it's really important to have compassion for yourself in the same way you'd have it for someone else. It's really hard to be kind to yourself, I think, compared to being kind to others sometimes, and I think we lose sight of that. What I would say is probably the most important thing is to stay connected. So as opposed to social distancing, we actually need to be socially connected, just physically distant. And so the important thing that we need to do is reach out and make connections with the people around us. We're fortunate to be at a time in the world where we can do that almost instantaneously, no matter where you're at.
So good.
And so I think God's given us a way to do that in this time that has not been a part of human history before. And just from the very beginning of humankind, we're wired for connection. That's what brings us physical health. That's what brings us mental health. And Jesus talked about it in his greatest commandments. In Matthew 22, 37 through 39, he said, the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And the second one is just like it, or is equally as important, is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so I think the crucial part of those is the connections that we have, right? Our connection to God is the most important thing that we have. And our connections with each other and the way that we treat ourselves, those are crucial to our well-being right now.
That's so good. Hey, and maybe you're tuned in. I want to just talk to you just for a second. Right now, parents, grandparents, they can be isolated and feel alone. And what these guys are saying are so good. They do need some connection. So I would encourage you, if you're watching, man, stay connected to some people that are older and maybe they don't have the ability to do a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, like a Zoom call. So I would encourage you to stay in connection with those kind of people, even if they're just friends or neighbors. Just jump on the phone, call them, or give them a text and ask them how they're doing. I think that's vital. So for me as a pastor, just want to tell you one way you can stay healthy, because these two guys are both spiritual men. They both are church people. They understand God and His Word. So I'm not trying to come in and say, well, here's what I would do because I'm a pastor. But I'll give you one little tip on the spiritual side. Don't let this time be a time where you get away from your relationship with God, with His Word, and with prayer. I think those are vital to stay healthy also. So I would encourage you just to keep doing that. There's a second question, and that's this. Dealing with stress, anxiety, and pressure, what does that look like right now? Jason?
So I think there's some really practical ways to deal with anxiety. It can feel really challenging in the moment, but our anxiety is always about what's going to happen in the future. So if we can be in the present moment where we're at, that is always going to take our anxiety down quite a bit. And there are some simple ways to do that, right? So the idea is you have to get out of your head and into your body, is the way that it was taught to me. Some simple things like exercise. It doesn't have to be CrossFit. You don't have to build a home gym.
God.
Yeah, but at least, take a walk in the morning.
Yeah.
There's nothing as invigorating as just taking a really nice walk in the morning to make you feel healthy and whole. You can also, I think the word I would use is gratitude. Practice gratitude. I think that one is by far the most powerful. Gratitude helps us to control our mood. It helps us to control our sleep, helps us to control our appetite, because gratitude changes the way that our hypothalamus works, which is the part of the brain. It's like a control center for all of these really important things. And so if you practice even trying to find things to be grateful for, that's really going to change the way your mood is throughout the whole day.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't necessarily say you have to be grateful about this season, because I know it's hard. It's hard for a lot of people, but you need to be grateful in this season.
Yeah, that's
For
so
sure.
good. Dr. Robert?
One is related to, as Jason said, I love what you said, the brain. We've learned a lot more about the brain. We're learning more and more, but at the core of it is the amygdala. And that's the fear, flight, freeze, part of our brain.
Yeah.
And there's so much fear out there today. There's so many people that are struggling with fear of all different sorts. The challenge of this season is it isn't just about one area of life. It's about the economy. It's about emotions, family, all of that. So the amygdala can get hijacked.
Yeah.
So what do? Philippians 4 tells us, don't be anxious about anything, but pray about everything. Present your request to God. And then the best part, and if you're listening, you might want to close your eyes over this part. And the peace of God that goes beyond understanding will guard your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. So what I love with that verse is it's a trigger. When I'm anxious, it tells me I need to pray. Now there are other issues that cause anxiety and that cause issues with the amygdala. But for many of us, many situations, it's being worried, as Jason said, about the what ifs. So when you get anxious, tell yourself, what I need the most is the presence of God. So pray.
Yeah, that is so good. What a great answer. And if you're anxious right now because you lost your job, or I know I talked to a couple different people where they've applied for unemployment and that still hasn't come through, and they're talking in the middle of May. And so sometimes that can feel like, man, that really makes me anxious. But I want to encourage you, even here at the church, we have something called care right now. And care is that we care about the people that are part of Faith Family and actually have a fund that people have been given to help out. So man, if you need some help, make sure you contact the church for that, because we want to help. That's the whole idea. Here's a third question, and Dr. Robert, I'll start off with you on this one. If I'm sensing difficulties, challenges within myself or with a friend or a family member, what do I do?
The isolation that we're in now, or the restrictions that we're in, they're pushing us together.
Yeah.
You know, on one hand, it's amazing because suddenly we're focused on home. You know, there are husbands and wives that have been so busy that they've hardly had time with one another. Now there are a number of them that are having a lot of time. Children, we're having time with younger children, older children as well.
Yeah.
So part of what it really involves, I believe, is when there's a tension with an individual, to confront in a way that is healthy. You know, the way that I've known and used for a while is the sandwich approach. This is not very technical, but it is affirmation, confrontation, reaffirmation. You know, if you've offended me, and I say, Pastor Mike, you know, something you said, I first of all, I want to tell you, I really appreciate you. I value you.
Yeah.
Our relationship is important, but something that you said was hurtful, and I want to share that with you.
Yeah.
And then you respond. We tend to say, if I get really angry and loud, it's going to help, but it won't.
Right.
Truth is powerful without filling it up with extra emotion. Truth. And then at the end, after we talk it out, you know, once again, I value the relationship.
Yeah.
So the loving approach to confrontation, the scripture says, speak the truth in love.
Yeah.
What that doesn't mean is I tell you I love you and then I pelt you.
Right.
But that I do it in a way that conveys love.
Yeah, that's great. Jason?
Yeah, so I think I would just add to that beyond like keeping each other accountable and doing it in love is really being there to listen to the other people in your life.
Right.
I think it's really powerful if we can sit with someone who is in pain or stressed or anxious, and we can just be there with them and not try and fix it. Because typically we're not the one who's going to solve the problem anyway, right? That's something that God can do that's above and beyond our control a lot of times.
That's so great. Hey, so a bunch of you guys, we asked you, hey, if you had a question, would you be willing to send a question in so that we could ask these experts on their opinion or their advice on that? And so you guys did that. So thank you for going ahead and sending them in. And we're going to call this sort of like rapid fire. So I'm going to go through some of the questions that we got and give these guys some time to be able to answer them. And I'm hoping this will help you and let you know that, hey, man, we really actually got your questions and we want to be able to answer them. So the first one is, when the weather is bad, which I don't know what you guys are talking about. It just, we have warm weather, then snow, then a tornado, then snow? I don't know. But anyway, when weather is bad, what are healthy indoor stress relievers? Jason?
So I think the simplest one and probably the most overlooked one is drink enough water. The stress hormone's called cortisol. And when it floods our body, it does all kinds of damage because it causes swelling. If we drink 8 to 10 glasses of water a day, that actually flushes the cortisol from our system. So it's a simple way. You don't have to put much effort into it. It's just simply drinking 8 or 10 glasses of water, even more if you can, but don't go overboard.
So Jason, real quick, so just want to help you all out. That doesn't include Pepsi, Coke, or any of those kind of things?
No, not just because it has water in it. Those don't count.
Okay. Dr. Robert?
You know, probably exercise when you're limited, and there are people that have treadmills at home or whatever, but, you know, maybe you don't.
Yeah.
Maybe you're in small quarters. My wife and I, like 3 weeks ago, you know, Pamela said, would you be willing to do a workout video with me? Well, I have my own workout routine, but she's like, this would be a together thing. So we got some, 25-minute YouTube video. There's a whole series of them for free. We did one earlier today, and, and I got to admit, I'll goof around a little bit through it. She's a little more serious with it than I am. But it's been a good connect point, and we're able to get a little exercise.
Yeah, well, those are great answers. Here's one. People who live alone or already struggle with isolation, what do they do during this time? Dr. Robert?
One person said that this season is heaven to introverts.
Yeah.
That it's a season if you're used to being a person. Of course, an introvert is someone who is energized by being alone. It doesn't mean they don't want to be with other people, but they're energized by being alone. The extrovert is the opposite. So the introvert, when they have a lot of alone time, the extrovert says, how can you be so comfortable with it?
Right.
So the extrovert, they are climbing the walls by now, because of dealing with this. So part of what I would say, once again, the brain. David did self-talk. David said, bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name.
Yeah.
And forget not his benefits, who
That's so
forgives your sins and heals all your iniquities. So praising the Lord opens your mind up to magnifying God, to the greatness of who he is. So that's one. The other one I would say that doesn't sound very spiritual, but read a book or a novel about something totally different, a science fiction or some other, historical novel or whatever that allows you a little bit of a periodic escape.
Wow, that's really good. Jason?
I think what I would add to that is, just do anything that really is life-giving to you. And that's going to look different for everybody. So some people that might be cooking, somebody might like doing puzzles, somebody who really is in for some punishment might like doing house remodeling projects. But ultimately, do whatever really refreshes your soul.
Yeah.
That's really important. And again, connect with other people, because if you keep everything in silence and secrecy and you're going through a tough time, you can't get help.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
That's so good. I'll just throw in real quick. I know for us, we have just my wife and I in our house, but then we also have our kids with us and our grandkids. So we've been doing a lot more cooking. We've been doing a lot more playing around, fun stuff with them. And if you can do that, I get it. If you don't have the kids around, I get it that it can be different. But I love that I've seen some of our folks post that they're using this time right now to reorganize closets, drawers, all that kind of thing. You just find something and make sure it's enjoyable to you, and I think that will help you out. Here's a third question. A lot of parents have asked some form of, how can I be strong for my kids in moments when I don't feel it myself? I don't want them to think that mom's not okay or dad's not okay. What do you guys have to say with that one? Dr. Robert?
Well, there are a few words that I know we're emphasizing. Help, hope, and healing.
Yeah.
Hope is such a big thing that is so important right now.
Yeah.
A lot of people are dealing with fear, but we need to be able to feed the hope within children. When children see parents out of control, it makes them feel out of control.
Wow.
So what that doesn't mean, let's say you have a teenager, 14 years old, and the parent has lost their job. It doesn't mean you don't talk to them about it, because on one hand, if you lose control over it, that can be hurtful. But if you deny it, better that we're able to be honest. I'm struggling, and as a mom or a dad, this is a really tough time, but I'm trusting God. We're going to get through it, but honestly, it's hard. And if you have any questions, ask me about it.
Wow.
To not only feel what you're feeling, but to talk about it and to talk about how you manage it. During this season, a younger generation is watching how we respond.
Yeah.
And they're going to learn, because God only knows what they will face years from now.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, I remember when my dad did this, or I remember when my mom did this.
That's really, really good. Jason?
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add, because honestly, my answer's the same. We're going to model for them what we would hope they do if they come into problems.
Yeah. So that's so great. Sort of a similar question. This one says this. One teacher asked, how can I support my students from a distance?
I don't think it's just about academic support. At this very moment, kids need emotional support. They need supportive encouragement. They need to know that it's okay to be having a difficult time and to be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
So I think teachers are taking on kind of an extra role in kind of managing more emotions of the kids than they probably ever had to. And so my hat goes off to all the teachers out there. I think as long as you are encouraging and you bring joy to your virtual classroom in whatever way you can do that, that is going to be hugely beneficial to those kids.
Dr. Robert?
You know, and totally agree with all of that. The only little thing that I would add, I taught at a university for 10 years. And I'd like to give a little bit of relief to all the parents that are out there teaching right now. At universities and schools all over the world, what leaders are telling their teachers is go a little bit easier on everyone.
Wow.
So if you have a student that is working, you're like, oh, they have to get this done, it's gotta be perfect. Yeah, you want it to be done well, but it, it being perfect and you losing your mind isn't worth it. So just know that everybody's having to moderate. Everybody's having to adjust those expectations.
Wow, that's really good. And that's great for all of you parents that are watching, that even on each other. I would encourage you to just go a little bit easier because you're seeing each other so much more. Okay, so this question is this, Dr. Robert. Older kids who can't get out of the house, what do I do for them?
Well, the older kids, currently are Gen Z.
Yeah.
So, as I talk, and I've taught a lot of Gen Z, students, social distancing, they've been practicing that for a long time.
Yeah.
It's already a part of their culture. So they've learned how to use technology and to connect. Actually, what's going on now is I talk to pastors and leaders. There are older pastors that are going to younger pastors to get advice, in ministry.
Wow.
There are, all over the United States, there are older ministers who are getting the help of younger pastors nearby with technology.
Wow.
Here at Faith Family, it's multi-generational. You built it that way, so it's beautiful. You're ready for this season, but there are a lot of people who are not. So for teenagers at home, they're probably in many cases better off than you know, and they might even be able to help their parents learn how to navigate this season. So one thing that I would urge is ask questions.
Yeah.
We tend to look at generations and the boomers. We know all about the Gen Z, and we label one another. But better that we ask, and as Jason said, that we listen, because you're probably never loving somebody more than when you're listening.
Wow, that's so good. How about you, Jace?
I would agree with all of that. I think I'm a millennial here, and I'm glad that wasn't brought up in a negative light.
Oh, good.
But I think that we are adjusted to technology. I think the harder part is if you're in your young 20s, right? You're used to having your social world. So I think that's a little more challenging. And so to really just be intentional about staying connected and talking to people about what's going on with you.
Yeah.
Because that's probably what you can do right now for the next couple of weeks.
All right, this is the last question on our rapid fire. It's an interesting one. What possible good do you foresee God bringing out of this season?
It's a little bit of a wilderness right now. We feel that life has gotten a little harder.
Yeah.
Every part of it has gotten a little more difficult. We're having to be more intentional. But what we have preached about our faith, faith overcomes everything. Love endures everything. Now we're really having to put that to work. So during this season, as we move ahead, as we walk through it, what I believe is that God is the master of taking difficult things and turning them around. We just celebrated Easter, so the cross, is certainly that. God taking something that is diabolical and making it into something glorious. When the Hebrew children went through the wilderness, the Bible says that the Lord allowed it to happen to see what was within them, to see if they would remain faithful to him. Now, people may talk about, did God do this? Did he send it? To me, you look at Jesus, he never talked to people and said, let's talk about why you're sick.
Right.
He said, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
So the thing to do right now is not to try to blame who caused this. And certainly there's some dimensions of it we have to figure out. But it's to say, how do we live what Christ wants us to be and do in the middle of it?
That's really good. Jason?
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. Again, just awesome. And I really think I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for the future because I think we're in a place in our culture where we've been so busy for so long, we didn't realize the toll that it was taking on us.
Yeah,
And this has been a chance to just slow down,
Yes.
right? It's a chance to kind of realign our priorities. And so instead of like achievement and promotion and on to the next thing, money, whatever it is that we've been reaching for, we can maybe move relationships back to the top of what's important.
Yeah.
I think that's the hopeful thing that comes out of this to me is we're all forced into a position where we now have to make relationships a priority. And I think it's going to be amazing to see what the church does with that.
Wow, what a great answer. So, hey, if you're struggling in any area and you're hearing all of this and you're saying, oh, man, but I need this answered, I want to just encourage you. We have some other questions we're going to do. We only had a certain amount of time. And we're going to be posting them at different times, and we'll let you know when that is, where we answer some other questions even. But I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank both of you guys for letting me interview you today and ask questions. I think it was so helpful. I do want to just say this in closing up, that I know for myself personally, this has been a time where I've been asking God, what do you want to change in my life? What do you want me to do different in life? I've been even asking him, what do you want to do different when we come back together and meet in this building? And I think that is stuff that God has been speaking to my heart, and I bet he would do the same with you. Maybe he wants you to live a different way or do some things a different way. So I would encourage you, just be asking God, is there something through this whole thing that is going on right now that since I am quieting down, you want to speak to me? I know he has spoken to me, and I'm excited about that. I believe he'll do the same for you.